Hey everybody, this is Joanne Ledesma with allgrassmusic.com, and we are with Stillhouse Junkies from Durango, Colorado.
I'm Cody Tinnen, I play upright bass.
I'm Fred Kozak, I play guitar, octave mandolin, and mandolin.
And I'm Alyssa Wolf, I play the fiddle.
So you guys came out with an album called Calamity, coincidentally right before the pandemic, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. We released it on March 7th, 2020.
So how did you guys survive during that time?
We sat around feeling sorry for ourselves for at least a month, I think, like everybody else, as we watched all of these gigs cancel. And we, at some point in April, we're trying to think of ways we could still play music at all, because venues were closing and there was no way to play indoors. So fortunately for us, Durango folks are very supportive of their local bands, and we launched kind of an ongoing tour that we called the Rolling Junkies Review, which was a Google sign-up sheet that people could fill in their name for a slot and put their address, and we would drive to their house and play a 30-minute set in their driveway or on their patio, and then we would head off to the next thing. And we, over the course of the summer and fall, we ended up playing about 250 of those little sets all over the county, a lot of places we had never visited. These guys grew up in the area, so that was kind of that kept us sane and got us connected with some more local folks than we maybe would have met, and I think hopefully won us over some new fans, and then we were able to actually perform and keep our chops up.
Yes, and you are touring right now. In fact, right now we are in Los Angeles, California, the hub of bluegrass music, right?
Yes, indeed.
So
Kentucky of the West, they
yes,
call it.
Kentucky of the West. So I want to talk a little bit about how you guys came together, because you have an interesting background, and I'll talk a little bit about this when we get to some of the songs. Somebody played trombone, somebody was studying jazz, somebody was going to school, right? And so somebody played in a funk band, right? Mm-hmm. And so your background didn't start at bluegrass like a lot of people like Billy Strings and that so forth. You guys had a different kind of upbringing. So at some point you had to make a decision to go into bluegrass, and then make another decision that, hey, this feels really good, and let's go towards this genre. Tell me a little bit about how each of you went from one place to another.
So I started out studying classical violin as a kid, and I ended up, when I was 18, kind of pivoted and stopped playing music for a little while. And then when I came back to music is when I made the transition. So I was an adult, and I started taking Irish fiddle lessons, and that sort of transformed into finding other people to play with and getting introduced to more. And I grew up around bluegrass. I went to a lot of festivals, but I never really played it as a kid. So when I was an adult, I made the conscious decision to start playing it. And then when I met these guys, I had already been playing in a couple bands around Durango, and really I found the love for the specific kind of music I like to play when I met these guys, which is a more progressive style.
Because it's music,
yeah, it allows me to tap into my classical training, because I'm definitely not a traditional bluegrass player.
So. But you like to improvise too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And how about you guys?
Yeah, I did play jazz trombone in high school, and definitely considered music school as an option, but I started playing in bluegrass bands when I was 14, 15 years old, and if I had been more aware that there were some college programs available for that, they could have been something I did. But much like Alyssa, I took a pretty good stretch of time off from music completely, where ironically enough, I was living in Austin, Texas, and didn't play in any bands, and didn't really play music very much at all, and had a totally different career. And then when I moved back to Colorado after a short time in Atlanta, I really wanted to just bring music back into my life and have it be a part of my life again. And it just happened to coincide with meeting Fred and meeting Alyssa, and then fast forward a little bit, and the band started, and we started touring regionally and now nationally, and next year internationally. So it's just kind of worked out, but through a lot of hard work. But the ultimate goal for me was just to play more music, in my personal life. So it's great. Yeah.
The thing about bluegrass and alternative grass styles is it's acoustic, so you can just pick something up. Absolutely. And you don't have to plug in, and that's the nice part of it, at least for many of the fans. What about you?
Yeah, I don't want to go too far back, but in the beginning there was nothing.
Space.
There's just a void of I grew up. I started playing guitar as a kid, but I didn't really get into acoustic music until actually my mom dated. After my parents split up, she dated a mandolin player, pretty traditional bluegrass mandolin player, and he kind of got her into bluegrass and going to festivals, and I went with them to a festival just down the road from us called Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival, which is a huge East Coast event, and I heard all these bands, Del McCurry Band and Tim O'Brien and all of these really kind of titans of modern bluegrass, was exposed to that, and then I started to, I think just like you, Joanne, I kind of caught the bug a little bit and saw the whole jamming scene, how that worked, and really thought it was a cool way to
It is a bug, right?
meet people. And yeah, I mean, and it's funny, like bluegrass is really full of people who have migrated over from other genres of music. Like when you talk to people who play, like a lot of them grew up playing rock or moved over from playing electric instruments, or there's something about bluegrass in particular that draws people in when they experience it in that kind of setting. So for me, that got me going, and then I have played some form of acoustic music since college. Really was when I started to play bluegrass in earnest. And then Durango, didn't move there for the bluegrass scene, but there is a music scene, and that was my strategy for meeting people, was to go to the jam, and that's what I did when I lived in Boston. I went to a weekly bluegrass jam, and I met my entire friend group through that, so I did that in Durango. I met Alyssa maybe 2 weeks after I moved to town at a jam. I met Cody at a friend's house, mutual friends jam. And then it took us a little while to fit the pieces together
Networking.
into the current configuration, but that was how we all connected, was through jamming and just going to sitting in a circle kind of.
That seems to be the root of bluegrass. It stems from the jamming, and then all of a sudden it grows into this thing, and then other people want to see this thing more, and then here you are.
Totally.
So listening to Calamity, I picked up a couple things on the songs. So, well, two things. One, you're a three-piece, so that's a little bit different, and probably a little bit more hard work for you guys. And then the second thing is it listening to your songs, there seems to be a little angst, a little edginess to it. It's not like these sweet love songs or Missing Home. It's sort of these things that are going on, right, with a little attitude. So is that part of why you guys named it Calamity, or am I far off on that?
Well, we had the collection of songs, and then I was trying to find something that kind of captured the energy of the project up to that point of that batch of music, and it felt like it had an edgy quality to it. And a lot of the songs are about historical stuff. There's a suite of songs about Ernest Shackleton and his adventures and misadventures, and there's another song on there about the Lewis and Clark expedition. There's some songs that aren't about specific events, but kind of about figures rooted in the Old West. And Durango is a frontier town, and it still has some of that mojo. So I think that steered me toward just trying to find a word. I don't remember. Somewhere on my phone I have a list of the other names I considered, but I think that was
like Calamity is kind of a vintage word, right? Which sort of
captured it
style.
pretty well.
Yeah. It does have that kind of vibe for sure.
But everything I came up with was somewhere in that vein.
It fit with all your songs. What about the songwriting process? How do you guys go about that? Is somebody writing on a napkin and then bringing it to the table, or I've interviewed Carlos Santana, who says that he always takes a video of himself and records all his licks, and then he'll go back at a later time and watch it and see if there's a song in it. Mm-hmm. What is your guys' songwriting process?
Well, Fred is our primary songwriter, and I think we're really lucky to have a prolific writer in the band that, and honestly, it gives Alyssa and I the time that we both like to have to write, because I think we just need a little more time than Fred typically does for a song. Mm-hmm. But the way the band works with new material is, I think all three of us generally have a song mostly mapped out, pretty well done, close very close to a completed song when we bring it to the band, and then when the three of us get together is when we kind of really fine tune it, and there have been some songs where we make drastic changes and some songs where we barely change anything, but I think all three of us kind of like to have like a relatively wrapped up tune before we bring it to the other two. Yeah,
that's awesome. Talk a little bit about some of the songs on this particular record, Calamity. Is there one that you have a favorite or one that was maybe most difficult?
I think the Shackleton Trio is one of the most technical pieces of music we play and have played, and that when we play that live, it's a continuous three movement piece, you know, so it's like a 15-minute
trilogy, right?
Yeah, it's like a 15-minute thing, but
yeah, I guess I tend to, I'm kind of like the opposite of John Prine, where he was always trying to write stuff with more chords, and he kept realizing when he finished the song that it was the same three chords. Like he said that, you know, I was like, oh, I finally wrote something that's more like jazzy. And like, nope, same three chords. But I try to I think I've tried to not be too simple for whatever reason. I have some chip on my shoulder where I need to put other stuff in there, and I've had songs where I'm like, this could be finished, but I'm gonna add this bridge, and then we're gonna do this, and that's part of our calling card as a band is playing some pretty heavily arranged and technical stuff. I think it's a little more like prog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some songs more than others, but almost everything we do has some kind of element.
I heard a little bit of funk and a little bit of almost maybe Django Reinhardt or gypsy jazz going in there. I could see that you guys are schooled on that before, you know, you're doing what you're doing today.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that as a fan, and the technicality. And speaking of technicality, what is the one thing that each of you has to have in the studio and or on stage? Like, what's your go-to? I'm a gearhead, so.
Oh, well, being an acoustic band, yeah, we don't go too deep into the world of gear. I think all of us have a deep love and appreciation for acoustic instruments themselves, and all three of us have spent whatever money we may have to have instruments that we really feel connected to. So just having my bass is kind of my dream bass that I wanted for a long time, and found one, and so I'm just really happy to have that particular instrument.
Yeah, we all have instruments that we either had made for us or chose out of a large selection of, like Alyssa's violins were both. She chose them out of many possible candidates, and they have kind of stories, and she knows the origins of them, and I think it's important to us to know the stories of our instruments and how old they are. And Cody's bass was made in 55, and all three of my instruments were made by people that I know personally, you know. There's a certain, because that's where you're spending most of your time.
Yeah, and with Alyssa, you have such a good ear, and you know exactly what you're looking for in a violin. So.
Yeah. I selected my violin based on its tone, and I think the most important thing for me on stage and in the studio is to have my number one fiddle and to have it in good working condition.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone were to take away my DI, fine.
Yeah.
Take away everything.
I just
I just want my fiddle. I think that's because we are an acoustic.
Our instruments are absolutely extensions.
It's almost a spouse at some time.
They're extensions of our personality, I think.
Yeah.
Our Merv boots would be number 2.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not wearing mine right now, but yeah, the boots.
We have custom boots from a Durango artist, so that would be number 2.
And then I also wanted to. We're just down to about our last minute, but I also want to say, do you guys feel like you've made it? Because you've got a couple of awards, a couple of festivals where you placed, right? And then you recently won the 2021 IBMA International Bluegrass, the Momentum Award. Do you feel like you've deserved and earned that momentum?
We worked really hard, so I think any acknowledgement of that feels great, and that comes in a lot of forms, but it's nice to occasionally get an actual stamp of approval that someone says you did a good job. You know, that you don't get that in music and art very often. Most of the time you're trying to figure out, do people like us, or are they just being nice?
Yeah, I will say that anything that has happened in that vein has just tended to motivate us
Naturally.
more and
It
more.
came naturally.
And we're, no, it's just motivation for us.
Yeah.
Like, we're very thankful and gracious for that recognition, but I think ultimately, like, it just drives us more.
It just makes us want to work harder.
Yeah, we just want to keep working and
Great.
make a living.
Well, and as far as the making it thing, there's not really a point where I think you have milestones as a band or an artist that you can acknowledge, but we still play bar gigs for nobody.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, we're
But
still,
I
we
can,
have,
as a band manager, you guys have management now, and you have a booking agency and a couple of awards.
We just signed a recording contract. We
Yeah.
just signed with a label actually a couple weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
In Nashville, which is going to be huge. We're going to
Is
be
that-
out there at the end of January, beginning of February to record our next album. So there's a lot of stuff in the works that
Yay.
feels,
Well,
like
congratulations on all your success,
you.
Stillhouse
Thank you.
Junkies. I fell in love with you
Thank
when
you.
I saw you at Picking in the Pines.
Thank you.
And it's an honor to have you back here in LA for your first time. So thanks for
Thank you
joining
for
us.
taking
Thank
the
you for
time to talk.
having
My name is Scott Gates. I play with the Get Down Boys, and you're watching allgrassmusic.com.
Howdy, folks. I'm Danny Hootenanny Clark with the California Bluegrass Music Association. Thank you for tuning in to allgrassmusic.com.